matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Former President Rodrigo Duterte is set to face the ICC pretrial chamber on Monday for the critical confirmation of charges hearing in The Hague. A panel of 3 judges will evaluate evidence regarding 3 counts of crimes against humanity to decide if the case will proceed to a full criminal trial. A recent survey reveals a deep disconnect between the public and their leaders, with 6 out of 10 Filipinos feeling ignored by elected officials. And the season of Lent begins today with Ash Wednesday rites observed in parishes nationwide. Now, welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. And now, first on the agenda. The International Criminal Court has set the confirmation of charges hearing in the case against former President Rodrigo Duterte next week. According to the ICC, the pretrial hearing is scheduled from February 23 to 27 before pretrial chamber 1, where Duterte is suspected of crimes against humanity, including murder and attempted murder linked to the war on drugs between 2011 and 2019. 3 judges will preside over the 4-day hearing, where the prosecution, defense, and lawyers of the victims will present their arguments. The ICC clarified that this is not yet a trial, but a pre-trial process to determine if there is enough evidence for the case to proceed.
This hearing is not a trial. I have to stress that this is a pre-trial hearing. So at this stage, the judges will not decide on Mr. Duterte's innocence or guilt. Instead, the judges will decide whether there's enough evidence against Mr. Duterte for the case to go to trial. They have up to 60 days to review the evidence and make their decision.
Meanwhile, some victims and their supporters have reported receiving threats from Duterte supporters abroad. They also expect online attacks and trolling in the coming days as a confirmation of charges hearing nears. More than 500 victims are set to participate in the pre-trial process through their legal representatives.
Ganong threat na paatrasin o patahimikin yung mga biktima. Sa kabilang banda, kapag pumunta doon, syempre hindi na rin namin alam yung emosyon ng mga tao, pero nakakakuha kami ng sentimiento na hindi welcome ang mga biktima, hindi welcome ang mga abogado ng biktima sa The Hague. Lalo na sa mga lugar na idineklara na nila na Duterte Street, Duterte Park, na parang hindi daw yon, hindi welcome ang mga quote-unquote, akala nila sinasabi nilang anti-Duterte.
Now in other news, Senate President pro tempore Ping Lacson addressed questions on potential Senate actions after Senators Bato de la Rosa and Bongo were named as alleged co-perpetrators in the ICC case against former President Rodrigo Duterte. In an interview with Storycon, Lacson explained that legislators are immune from arrest while Congress is in session for offenses punishable by 6 years or less. He added that any ICC arrest warrants against senators that this is meant to uphold the country's legal processes and not to protect colleagues from accountability. Meanwhile, Lacson maintained that there are no substantive changes to the Blue Ribbon Committee's draft report on the flood control scandal.
Is there anything in the law or in the Senate rules that states that that's an optional thing na maaring ang Senado ay hindi pumayag na i-release ang akusado o respondent?
Wala, except na nasa Constitution. Yung immunity from arrest, yun yung 6 years and below.
Yes, sir.
May immunity from arrest pagka yung Congress is in session.
Yes, sir.
So, I suppose, yung definition ng Congress is in session, may nagsasabi na sinidye, meaning bandang June ito. Doon mag-adjourn yung first regular session. Meron namang iba pwedeng sabihin na hindi. Pag nag-recess kayo sa March, walang session yung Senate. But of course, even during recess, basta hindi sinidye, tuloy yung trabaho sa Senate dahil nakapagkunda kami ng mga committee hearings.
Yes, sir.
So that's one issue that we have to resolve. Ano yung definition ng Congress in session or not in session. Itong sinabi ko na kailangang i-course through sa local court pag dumating yung ICC warrant, no? Ang hindi ibig sabihin nito, yung merit ng kaso, kasi hindi naman alam ng judge kung ano yung particulars, ano? Pero at least mag-i-issue ng corresponding order. Ito yung opinion na nakuha ko. Dapat mag-issue ng corresponding order yung local judge para for the implementation of the execution of the warrant of arrest. Kailangan merong corresponding order from the local court. Ganon din ang mga summonses, ano? Kapag ang foreign court nag-issue ng summons, halimbawa merong civil case o criminal case na nakapile sa Amerika o saan man dako ng mundo, labas ng Pilipinas, hindi basta-basta yun pwedeng i-serve na diretso sa respondent. Idadalhin muna ito sa local court para sila yung magbibigyan ng corresponding order na para ma-implement yung summons.
This version of your bill, how is it different from the draft committee report? Sorry, not bill, the report. This version of the report, may pagkakaiba po
Saka
ba?
yung nag-leak?
Oo, doon sa na-leak na
Sa
version.
nag-leak? Walang substantive na revision doon. Ang binago lang doon, yung isa, no, yung significant pero hindi substantive. Yung salat na recommended for filing of charges, tinalitan namin ng recommended for preliminary investigation, which amounts to the same thing, ano? Kasi yung kaya lang gawin ng Blue Ribbon Committee o ng Senado, mag-recommend ng preliminary investigation to be conducted by the DOJ and or ombudsman as the case may be, no? Hindi kami pwedeng mag-recommenda ng filing of charges sa court. Clarify lang namin yon kasi nagkaroon ng misunderstanding na pagka-filing of charges, sa layman nga naman, ang intindi, sasampa na ng Senado sa korte. Kaya pinalitan namin yung phrase na yon. Sa halit na filing of charges, ginawa namin preliminary investigation.
Now on to another story. The Department of from kindergarten to grade 12. In the suggested trimestral system, the school year will be divided into 3 academic terms. The first trimester will be from June to September, the second from September to December, and the third from January to March. Education Secretary Sunny Angara explained that the proposal, which is being eyed for school year 2026-2027, is part of a holistic approach for quality education. The DepEd maintained, however, that no final decision has been made about the initiative. The agency also says it remains committed to refining the proposal based on feedback from the field. Now, for their part, the Teachers' Dignity Coalition says they are not rejecting the proposal. Chairman Benjo Basas told the Big Story that they want authorities to first explain the rationale for its proposed implementation.
I'd like to clarify, hindi po kami magsasara. Hindi kami nagsasara, no, dito sa proposal po na ito, no, at gusto po naming malaman ano ba saan nang gagaling yung rationale, no, ano yung hugot ng Department of Education dito, no. Is this consistent with the findings and recommendations of the EDCOM 2?
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know, no, but as I have mentioned po, no, kami po ay bukas po dito.
The Catholic faithful is observing Ash Wednesday today, marking the start of the Lenten season. And for the latest at Baclaran Church, we have our mobile journalist, Francis Rivera, reporting to us live this morning. Good morning, Francis. Kamusta na ang sitwasyon dyan sa Baclaran Church? Okay, Francis, let's unmute lang our audio, ano?
Pauline, hello?
Go ahead, Francis.
Pauline, umaga pa nga lang pero tuloy-tuloy na yung pagtagsa ng mga deboto dito sa Baclaran Church or National Shrine of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. At makita nyo nga sa akin likuran, dito ay yung isa sa mga entrance ng simbahan. Pero makikita nyo medyo kokonte pero yung dun sa may kabilang side, no, kung saan isa rin dun sa mga entrance na malapit nga rin sa may LRT station, tuloy-tuloy yung pagdating at mahaba na rin ang pila at yung Divina Masses ay tuloy-tuloy din at susundan nga yan ng mga misa maya-maya nga lang. So ngayon ay makikita niyo sa akin likuran, ayan, So medyo kakaunti pero maya-maya nga raw inaasahan nila ang pagdami at sa seguridad naman no puli nakikita natin yung police visibility sa labas sa may entrance at dito rin sa loob mismo ng simbahan kung saan nga umiikot yung ating mga kapulisan para nga masigurado yung seguridad at kaayusan dito sa Baclaran Church.
Francis, nakapag-attend ka na ba ng misa? Ano yung naging mensahe naman ng simbahan ngayong Ash Wednesday?
Yes, Pauline, no, naabutan nga natin ang novena masses pa lang or isa pa sa mga novena mass dito sa Baclaran at pero naririnig na rin natin dito yung mga karatula na nakalagay dito kung saan kailangan nga muna magsimba bagong araw magpalagay ng mga apo sa ating mga noo. Yun ng panawagan din nila. So mamaya-maya pagkatapos itong novena masses ay susundan nga.
Francis, may pagbabago ba sa pagbigay ng ashes this year? At may mga nakausap ka rin bang mga devotees? Bakit napili nilang simula ng Lenten season dyan sa Baclaran?
Yes, Pauline, no? Parehas lang naman yung naging patakaran at yung sistema from last year dito sa Baclaran Church at dun nga sa mga devoto yung nakausap natin. Kaya sila dito rin sa Baclaran nagpunta Siyempre Wednesday din ngayon at kilala nga ang Baclaran Church bilang isa sa mga dinadayo tuwing Wednesday ng mga deboto ng Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
And alam naman natin, Francis, yung area surrounding Baclaran can get congested at times. So how is the situation outside the church as of this morning?
Yes, Pauline, dito nga sa Ross Boulevard, yung harapan mismo ng Baclaran Church. So tuloy-tuloy yung daloy ng trapiko, pero meron nga lang kaunting pagbagal dahil nga doon sa mga deboto na papark mismo doon sa harapan ng simbahan at dito naman sa loob ng simbahan halos puno na rin yung parking para nga doon sa mga debotong nais magsimba at ngayong gugunita nitong Ash Wednesday.
At may naikwento ba yung ilang mga devotees kung ano yung mga ilang personal sacrifices na gagawin nila ngayong Lenten season? Dahil isa na dyan, sabi ng simbahan, dapat gawin ay mag-abstain muna from social media, from the digital space. Yung ilang mga
Yes, Pauline. Isa sa common sa mga narinig natin sa mga nakausap natin devotee dito yung pag-abstain nila doon sa mga pagkain ng mga karne tuwing lalong-lalo na daw tuwing Friday. So, yan nga mag-uumpisa ng araw yan ngayong Friday mismo.
So susundin pa rin yung mga tradisyon when it comes to the Lenten season. All right, well, thank you very much for those updates from Baclaran Church. That was our mobile journalist, Francis Rivera, reporting. Don't go away. We will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. The latest survey from Okta Research shows that a majority of Filipinos believe elected officials do not value the public's views and opinions. The poll conducted from December 3 to 11 last year found that only 31% of Filipinos believe elected officials value the public's views. Meanwhile, 61% think politicians do not consider their opinions, while 9% were undecided. The survey was conducted among 1,200 adult Filipinos. And joining us to break down this survey is Okta Research Fellow, Dr. Guido David. Dr. Guido, welcome back to Morning Matters.
Yes, good morning, Bao, and belated happy Chinese New Year. And
belated happy Lunar New Year to all.
Yes.
survey, and let's start with your overall findings. So 61% of adult Filipinos said that elected officials in Congress and in local government do not value what people like them think. And then you have 31% believing that officials value their views. Walk us through your findings and break down these numbers for us, Doctor.
Yes, so this is part of the Tugon Masa fourth quarter survey of 2025 with 1,200 respondents nationwide face-to-face. So you're right, the question was about if, in their opinion, elected officials in Congress and local government value what they think. And you're right, it's across the whole Philippines, 31%, only 31%, less than majority, about 3 out of 10 said yes, they feel that they're heard. But the majority, about 6 out of 10, feel that they are not heard. So this part of the survey is non-commissioned. And although it's more or less the same across different regions, it's a bit higher in Visayas, for example. 37% said they feel that they are heard. And it's actually lower in Metro Manila. So it's actually surprising. 24% just said that they feel that they're heard by their local officials.
Mm-hmm. But what do you think are the main reasons why a majority of Filipinos, 6 in 10, believe that politicians do not consider their views, their public opinion? And would you say over a long period of time, or is this more of a short-term reaction to the current political climate that we have?
I think it's a combination of long-term and short-term. Long-term, I think Filipinos still have problems with the ease of doing business, which is more of a local issue. It depends on the local government, applying for permits, applying for some licenses. So these are the things that the day-to-day Filipino, the typical Filipino will face in their day-to-day lives, and this affects their way of life, how they conduct business, how they conduct their personal errands and duties. So and of course, short term about the corruption. This is also a problem, and it shows in one of our surveys. But in the same survey, we also asked about if the national government could, if they believe that the national government could solve the country's problems. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, 55% said yes. So there's a disconnect of sorts. Although we can think of these as two different things. And so they think that the systemic problems could be solved by the national government, but the local government is currently not really in tune with the needs of the Filipino.
Mm-hmm. Well, the survey also showed that 31% believe. But this is the question, Dr. Guido. If we truly have a functioning democracy, should we expect that number of people who feel valued to be higher?
Definitely. And I believe we have a functioning democracy, but maybe it just shows, and we're not, singling out any LGU or any, locality, but definitely Filipinos should feel that they're, heard of or heard by their local politicians. And if not, our democracy should be that we should elect those who we feel will be listening to us, listening to their constituents. So definitely, there seems to be a problem somewhere that if they feel like they're not being heard, they should, change their elected officials. But for some reason, they continue to vote for these local politicians that they feel do not listen to them.
And then you have 9% saying that they were undecided. And while that's a smaller segment, Dr. Guido, it still represents a number of Filipinos who feel that their voices aren't valued, or they're not decided, rather, on how exactly they feel, if they're being heard, if they're unheard. What do you think that hesitation suggests? And was that sentiment concentrated in any particular group?
Yeah, that's actually a high component. That's about 1 out of 10 Filipinos that are undecided, or they really can't say if they're heard or not heard. But this does not seem positive towards the locally elected officials. We're seeing about more or less the same, but a bit higher in Metro Manila. That's 10%, and in Balas Luzon, that's 10% also. A bit lower in Visayas and Mindanao for the undecided, so about 7%. And this ties to a recent, I think, leak result from Opta research that shows that among the corruption issues, the highest that they feel, or the highest form of, or the most common form of corruption, rather, is bribery. This is actually from another survey that we released, and 73% of Filipinos feel that bribery is the most common form of corruption. And I think this ties to this finding, because earlier we mentioned about ease of doing business, about applying for forms or permits or licenses, and there's a systemic problem if they feel that bribery is still integral to these processes. That means that Filipinos, the average Filipino can't access these services easily, and they have to resort to bribery to access these services, and that's why maybe they're not very satisfied with their local governments.
But let's also break this down by socio-economic class, Dr. Guido. Dissatisfied both classes A, B, C, and D feel unheard. But interestingly here, Class E respondents had a slightly higher percentage at 41% who believe that officials do value their views. How would you explain that difference?
Well, maybe the Class E are, more of them are recipients of the ayudas, and I think they have been receiving some forms of amelioration, so they feel that maybe they are given more, or they're getting more from their local governments, and maybe that's a factor, because that difference you highlighted, Pao, is significant. 28% only for ABC and 41% for E. So maybe that factor with the ayudas. I'm actually surprised that even with ayudas, they're still not that satisfied with what with their local governments.
So would you say this is more of a class-based issue, or is it a national political sentiment?
I think even with the difference in the classes, I think this is still a national political sentiment, because it's still not majority of Class E. Majority of Class E, 57%, still say they are not heard of by their locally elected officials. It's just that in Class E, only 3% are undecided, whereas in ABC, actually 11% or more are undecided. But maybe that just shows that generally they're still the sentiment is still towards the dissatisfaction with their local governments.
So when you have a majority of your population saying that they feel that their opinions are being disregarded, what would you say, Dr. Guido, are the potential consequences of that? And how should elected officials interpret these numbers? How can they use these findings to improve trust and engagement with the public?
Yeah, this is not a criticism per se on the local government. It's more like a scorecard. And I think our locally elected officials should consider this data and try to engage more with their constituents, with their residents, and not just engage more, but at least try to improve access to services, and maybe they could have a feedback form or something in their website. I know that the locally elected officials they're trying, but this is a sign that we need to step up some more. And also, in addition to that, Paui, let's remember that the flood control projects, these are also local problems. Not all areas have flooding problems or concerns, and so maybe this adds to that aspect that they feel that they're not being heard of.
Well, fighting graft and corruption in government still continues to rank among the top concerns for Filipinos for 2 consecutive quarters now, right, Dr. Guido? And as you mentioned, you have 73% of Filipinos saying that they think bribery is the most common form of corruption. How much does the lack of digitalization, do you think, in our system, and how urgent is it for the need to streamline processes in order to make a difference there?
We do have to catch up with our neighboring countries. In other countries, digitalization has taken a forefront, and I think we have to catch up and digitalize and make our services more streamlined, more efficient, so that not just to increase the public trust and approval for our locally elected officials, but I mean, just as a service to the Filipinos. Maybe this is what they want. They want digitalization, they want modernization, they want ease of doing business, they want processes faster. They don't want to have to resort to bribery to get their permits quicker or to get their permits percent. So I think these are some of the things that they could local governments could definitely implement to increase the satisfaction and make our constituents happier.
All right. Well, just as a final question, Dr. Guido, if surveys show that corruption is still among the top concerns for Filipinos and that a majority of the population feel that they are unheard, what does that mean politically? And do you think these issues will influence voter behavior leading up to 2028?
I think it will definitely influence voter behavior. And I think the Philippines younger generation, the Gen Zs, they're more, you could say, more woke or more in tune with what's happening nowadays. And I think, it might not be like before. So some of the politicians who may be banking on certain voter behavior, voting preferences, they might be surprised. There might be a shift in, voting patterns that we haven't seen before. Because these are symptoms and signs that the public is not really that satisfied currently with what's happening, especially in the local sense. And so, I think this is a sign for politicians, especially the local ones, to step up, improve the services, and listen to the Filipinos, listen to their constituents, make this country a better place. Because we don't have that much patience, I think. I mean, the younger generation, they'll be looking for changes. And if we have a functioning democracy, they will, make use of that democracy to make these changes happen.
All right, we're going to leave that there for now. Thank you very much for your time and for breaking down the numbers for us. That was Octa Research Fellow, Dr. Guido David.
Thank you.
Do stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back with more stories after this short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. President Bongbong Marcos says his administration is President inspected model housing units under the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino program during the 7th anniversary of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development in Taytay, Rizal. The 27 square meter units come with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, living area, and kitchen, and use precast technology to speed up construction. The government says the country faces a 6.5 million housing backlog, which could reach 22 million by 2040 if not addressed. Since 2022, around 423,000 housing units have been built, with the president vowing to make home ownership more accessible for Filipinos. Well, some groups say that while there are housing programs for the urban poor, many middle-class Filipinos still find it difficult to afford their own homes. And for more on the country's housing challenges and other economic issues, we're now joined by Professor Emmanuel Leco. He is the president and chief economist of Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines Incorporated and a senior fellow at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance, or CENPEG. Good morning, Professor Emmanuel, and welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Pauline, and thank you for having me.
Okay, so we heard from that report that the administration says more than 423,000 housing units have been completed already since 2022 under this expanded 4PH program. How impactful is that, Emmanuel, and will that actually make a meaningful dent in the country's housing backlog?
Well, considering the government's own statistics, this will not really make a big difference. Good thing is being done, but I think homelessness or shortage of housing in the country will continue to prevail.
What would you say are the biggest challenges in delivering affordable housing for Filipinos?
I think the key word there is affordable. Considering the family and income expenditure survey that was made available by the Philippine Statistics Authority, more than 50% of our population does not have excess income. And again, looking at the family budget structure, number one in their budget is food, housing, and again, our shelter, and clothing. However, considering that the majority or a big chunk of the household budget goes to food, transportation, nothing much is left for housing. And therefore, many of our population are not able to afford housing. This is very concerning. In the past, I'm not sure if you are familiar with the projects. In the Philippines, they had Project 1, 2, 3, 4. I think they reached up to Project 8. And that was a more deliberate housing program of the government. And also, it has become a buzzword that even led to a very popular song, Jet Prox. I didn't realize that Jet Prox came from the word project. And that was in recognition of a big community that was being housed in those projects. And the government was very active in that housing project. So now we have the Pag-ibig, we have the National Home Mortgage Financing, we have the recently announced, published project of President Marcos. But, even President Marcos said that given the housing shortage of 6 million plus, he wanted to build 1 million houses, 1 million homes a year. But they fell rather short of that goal. So right now, giving housing a priority is a very good step in the right direction, but the government will have to do something that will make it substantial and create an impact. But if the budget of the Filipino households cannot afford housing, more and more of this homelessness, housing shortage will continue to prevail in our country.
Well, under this program, qualified members can access loans at just 3% interest through the Home Development Mutual Fund. But for you, Emmanuel, how sustainable is this model? And realistically, who will be ultimately absorbing the cost of those lower interest rates?
Well, recently, the Bangko Sentral lowered the interest rate. That should create some opportunity for credit that can go to housing. However, if the housing right now continues to be built beyond the reach of the Filipino household, that will not be substantive or in terms of meeting the housing requirements of our people. So right now, there are big housing projects. Major developers are into housing, but we notice that the majority or a big beneficiary of these projects or buyers of these projects are those who have at least double incomes or who have relatives living abroad who are sending them money for mortgage financing. So unless this is addressed in a more holistic manner, first of all, low credit, the middle class families will not be able to afford that, and therefore housing shortage or housing issues will continue to be a problem for a majority of our Filipino population.
And then you also have middle-class families now expressing frustration that they don't qualify for free or heavily subsidized housing, but they struggle with high real estate prices. Do you agree, Emmanuel, that the middle-class segment, the middle-class families are getting left behind?
I can understand that. I can understand the frustration of the middle class. Many of our employed middle class families are still not able to afford housing. Why? Because of the cost of the housing beyond the reach of their incomes. So unless lower and deliberate program are addressed or are initiated by the government that will target not only the poorest of the poor. I can understand that. I think the priority should be the poorest of the poor. But you cannot leave the middle class far behind. They are working. Many of them have double jobs, but still they are not able to afford housing, education, and particularly when healthcare crisis hits their families, they are left without much to go to. So the government welfare program should not only be addressed or focused on the poorest of the poor, which I can understand, but then the poorest of the poor should be joined by the middle class in terms of the housing, healthcare, and education requirements that should be met by the government. Right now, I hate to say this, and I don't want to be always saying that we don't trust the government. Of course, we trust the government. However, we need to make sure that the programs are being initiated. 2028 is coming up, the 2028 election. So housing is a major election issue. Healthcare is a major election issue. Education is a major election issue. But definitely, the government should not only address these issues when elections are coming up, and they should also be focused on who to reach. And they should have a vision on, just like before, we had projects that were available, that projects, housing projects that the government initiated that made housing affordable to employed Filipinos. Right now, the private sector is the most active, in initiating these projects. But that will not be enough. The government should be the biggest buyer, the biggest financier of housing, both for the poorest of the poor and the middle class in the country.
But the government, Emmanuel, is also exploring and expanding into rental housing. From an economic standpoint, should we be shifting the focus from ownership to strengthening the rental market?
You know, the biggest dream of Filipino families to own their own home. So it will be very difficult to say that it will make sense to just lease or rent without owning the home. You know, that will go against the major dream of our Filipino families. Many of our families, you know, actually the poorest of the poor. You talk about those who do not own homes. Even in their deaths, they are not able to own their own plots. They are also being driven out or being evacuated in their deaths from their from cemeteries because the lease is only up to 5 years. So people, the major dream, the ultimate dream of Filipino families to own their own homes. So I don't think any economic argument can go against can go against that dream and diminish the impact of owning, you know, the fulfillment of owning their own homes.
Well, you're very right there. I mean, the dream is still for ownership, for Filipinos to say, I own this house, I own my own home. But let's talk about the economic impact of the expanded 4PH program, Emmanuel. Well, large-scale housing construction definitely stimulates industries such as cement, steel, and transport. How strong do you think is the multiplier effect of a program like this on our economy?
Oh, definitely. It will have a big multiplier effect. Any construction has it has a multi-layer of participants in building, you know, from not just the cement and the steel. Those are just what we see. But we also have major electrical, we have major infrastructure going into the home, the furnishings, everything. You know, it's like it's more than 8 times, I believe, that can be accomplished or achieved by a housing project. Definitely, housing is a major multiplier in our economy. However, I think the housing project should not only cover the 4 Ps, but they should also cover everybody by making the cost of housing affordable to the majority of our population.
All right, and just as a final question, 5 or 10 years from now, what indicators should we look at to judge whether this program, whether the administration's efforts are truly working? Is it home ownership rates? Is it poverty reduction or something else?
I think all of them. Poverty rate, because if you are poor, you cannot afford the housing. And I think to fulfill that ultimate goal, that ultimate dream of owning your own homes, I think that should be a major indicator. But definitely, affordability of living, the cost of living in the country should be made lighter. It should be made lower so that more people are able to feed their own families, provide shelter, make transportation available, and address the education crisis that we are currently having, because that will have a major impact on our economy. Right now, when the government, its own agencies, own departments are saying that we are undergoing a major education crisis, I think we have to look forward 5 years, 10 years down the road when our children join the workforce. If they are not properly educated, they did not get the proper skills, they did not get the proper values and attitude, the economy will also suffer. That will be the macro impact of education crisis, the macro impact of not attending to the problems that we are facing right now. And, finally, I think the issue of corruption in the country will have to be addressed sooner than later, and show the people that the tax money that the government is collecting from the population is not being stolen, it's not being robbed, and the government is effective in protecting the treasury of our country.
Well, we're going to save that topic for another conversation. We'd love to have you back here on the show, but for now, thank you very much for sharing all your insights. That was Emmanuel Leco, fellow at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance, or CENPEG.
Thank you very much, Pauline, and good morning to all of you.
Now, don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Onion farmers in Occidental Mindoro are raising concerns over falling farm gate prices, calling on the government to tighten regulation. Our mobile journalist, Daniel Dayao, reports.
Local onion farmers in Sablayan, Occidental Mindoro are feeling the impact of falling onion prices, calling on the government to better regulate the entry of imported products in the country. This harvest season, onions sell for as much as 150 pesos per kilo in the public market. But farmers say middlemen purchase their harvest at a much lower price.
Napakalaki po ng pagkakaiba ng presyong natatanggap namin kumpara sa presyo sa palengke. Sa amin po kinukuha ng mga buyer ng 30 to 35 pesos per kilo. Pero pagdating po yan sa palengke ay binibenta nila ng 140 to 150 pesos. So napakalaking diferensya po nito. Malinaw na hindi patas ang sistema. Maliit ang kita ng magsasaka. Mas mataas ang presyo sa consumer.
According to farmers, imported onions entered the market at the same time as their harvest, pushing down farm gate prices.
Sobrang laki po ng epekto ng pagdating ng mga imported sa panahon ng anihan. Dahil mabilis po nitong hinahatak pababa yung presyo ng ating mga sibuyas. Mas natangkilikid po ng mga Pinoy yung mga mura kaysa sa mga kalidad na produkto ng mga magsasabang Pilipino.
Farmers also emphasized how production costs can reach more than 200,000 pesos per hectare, covering seeds, labor, fertilizer, pesticides, and land rent. Their message to the government is clear.
Sana po kapag panahon ng anihan ay suportahan naman po natin yung mga local farmers. Sana po kapag pagdating ng January ay wala na po sana mga imported onions dahil nag-uumpisa na po kami mag-anihan. Sana magkaroon po tayo ng batas na nagbibigay ng proteksyon sa aming mga magsasaka na hindi samantalahin ng mga mapagsamantalang mga buyers at traders. Masutukan po sana natin ang suporta sa ating mga local farmers kaysa sa mga imported onions.
A similar case was also raised this month in Nueva Ecija. In an interview with the Philippine Star, Department of Agriculture's Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. said the numbers show that current stocks from imports are not overwhelming the market, but merely plugging a supply gap. That said, we are taking a closer look at why onion prices are falling at this time of the year, as claimed by farmers. He also noted that Bureau of Plant Industry projections suggest that even if remaining shipments arrive this month, imported red onion stocks may last only until March 6, just as the harvest is starting to peak. For now, farmers in Occidental Mindoro continue to wait for the government's feasible response. Kapatid Mobile Journal Daniel Dayao, we are One News.
Well, as Chinese New Year festivities believe in lucky charms and the guidance of feng shui. Let's find out in this report from mobile journalist Jazz Paredes.
The streets of Binondo burst with color and energy as the Chinese New Year celebration continues. People of all ages fill the streets to experience the festivities. Long lines form for Chinese favorites like tikoy and hopia. Food crawls remain a Binondo tradition, Chinese New Year or not. But beyond the feast, this season is also about luck and prosperity. Stalls line the streets selling various lucky charms, from house decorations to bracelets and even plants believed to attract fortune. More often, it's the older generation and parents who buy them, while Gen Zs are rarely seen making a purchase, which raises the question, do Gen Zs still believe in good luck charms? This mother and daughter proudly share the charms they bought.
We actually bought charms. Bumili po kami ng charms dito sa first stall na nakita namin. Show mo yung charms mo, ma? Yeah. Yung kay mama is for good health. And for, sabi ni ate kanina, for depression and anxiety. And also for money. And good fortune. Yes, for me po yes. Sa panahon ngayon, wala namang masamang maniwala.
But for other Gen Zs,
naniniwala po ako sa mga swerte ko, pero sa mga charms po, hindi po ako naniniwala. Yung mga swerte na nangyayari sa buhay natin, may purpose ba't nangyari yun? So para sa'yo, dadating talaga.
Meanwhile, inside the busy streets of Ongpin stands one of the oldest charm shops in the area, owned by the oldest feng shui expert in Ongpin, Tita Maxi. For her, passing down the business and the knowledge of feng shui to a younger generation remains a challenge. But despite this, she says hope is not lost. Young men and women still visit her shop, some for fashion, others in search of love and guidance, and she notes that belief often starts with family influence.
Ngayon, mas maraming dalaga kasi bumibili sila ng fashion. Kasi may fashion ako, may pang matanda, may pang younger, may pang dalaga. Maraming nakahanap ng love, lalo na nakahanap ng love, nakahanap ng inggit, maraming inggit, marami kami. Kaya ang customer ko, okay, nanay niya sumasama, lola niya sinasama yung mga apo niya ngayon. Family. Mas maganda ngayon, puro family pumupunta.
Still, Tita Maxi reminds the charms and feng shui are only guides. As the year 2026 approaches, she shares this reminder.
This year is 2026 is a double fire horse. Mainit ulo mga tao ngayon. Totoo. Baka kayo magsuot ng sobrang pula na damit. Tinan mo, ayaw ko, takot ako. Something blue, something green kasi kulang tayo sa tubig, no? This year, become wag mainit ulo. Kailangan himay-himay lang wag magalit. The feng shui is a guide na turuan kayo na beware lang.
Kapatid Jazz Paredes, we are One News.
And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters this Wednesday. We hope we've given you just the right start to. We are One News, all sides, all the time.